In this video, I want to discuss what the profit margins are going to look like for your very first residential assisted living and how that increases over time, especially when you can start opening up your second or third residential assisted living. So if you're interested, make sure to stick around. What's going on, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. If you're new here, my name is Serge. Welcome to the channel. To all my reoccurring viewers, thank you so much for all the love and support that each and every single one of you have shown this channel. And if you have not yet, make sure to go check out legionassistedlivingacademy.com, where I teach how to start your own facility from A to Z. And also you can book a one-on-one mentorship call. You can book a full in-day person mentorship with myself, and then also you can get the supportive month-to-month mentorship after that. That's something we can discuss once you book that. And you can go and get the Performa template, you can go get the residency agreement, so on and so forth. There's a lot of resources there. And if you have not checked out valleyalfventures.com, that is where we work with limited partners or passive investors to come alongside us and invest in facilities. So if that's something that you are interested in, feel free to go check that out and book a call with us. We would love to have a conversation with you. And now that the housekeeping is all out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the topic of this video. Now, something that people always mention when I do the one-on-one mentorship calls is asking me, Serge, how realistic are the margins in residential assisted living? And you always hear the number $10,000 per month is what you should be netting per home, or even up to 20,000, 15,000. You have all these different numbers kind of thrown out. Now, something that I like to always factor in when I'm doing any type of pro forma or running any type of underwriting for any new facility that I'm purchasing is working based off of percentages, because that gives a more accurate picture of what you could potentially make. And so what I always encourage people to do is go and run a pro forma and see what type of rates you would need to charge and factor in all the expenses that you think the facility might have. And then that will give you a really good picture of what type of profit margin you're going to make at that specific facility. Now, what I've seen in the past, and now things have kind of definitely changed as I've scaled up to more facilities, but what I've seen in the past and what happened with my very first facility was that when I started my very first facility, my profit margin per month was probably in the range of 12 to 15%. And that's not very high. The reason being is because it was a small facility, it was a 5-bed facility, and also my staffing, I was really not paying myself anything, and that was still the margins I was achieving. And so with your first facility, what happens oftentimes is you're gonna have the most expenses, and you're also gonna be having your startup costs within that first year, which would, brings down that profit margin quite a bit. And you're just gonna have to factor all that into that first year of you opening up your very first facility. Now, by the second year, I was able to really achieve that 15 to 18% profit margin with that same 5-bed facility. The reason was because I was becoming a lot more efficient and able to factor in and cut costs other places, right? I was able to negotiate my insurance to be lower. I was able to bring on better staff at better rates, whereas that first year I was kind of bringing on whoever I could that would help, and I was paying them a lot more than I probably should have. And so I was able to negotiate that down, bring on better staff, and I still wasn't paying myself and still achieving that 15 to 18% profit margin per month. And by that third year of operating that first 5-bed facility that I had, that many of you all know, I was probably in that 18 to 22% on average of a profit margin per month. And by year 3, that took some time. 3 years to get to that type of profit margin is quite a long time. But what I noticed as I scaled up was by your second, third facility, those profit margins are able to be achieved within that first to second year. The reason being is because you got the economies of scale working in your favor by the time you open that second and third facility. So you're able to kind of have the same staff being pivoted between different facilities, and then you're sharing one manager for 2 facilities, whereas like the first facility, if it's just the first one, you're paying a manager a lot more for that first facility, but you're able to negotiate that as you give them a second facility to manage, and you're not paying nearly as much. And so that's what I mean about the economies of scale. And then you're also just able to negotiate with your insurance company as you bring on more facilities. And that is something that I realized as you scale up with the economies of scale, that your margins get better. And once things become really efficient and you really have your SOPs in place and you have all your systems and really understanding where you can cut costs as you get your second and third one going, and reducing those costs really help to bring those margins up. And so the average healthy residential assisted living facility probably operates, and what I've seen in my experience, operates between that 22 to 25% profit margin. And a lot of the facilities that I have now are achieving that, if not higher. And that's something that doesn't happen right off the bat with your very first facility. Usually it takes a lot more time with that first facility. And so that's just something to keep in mind for a lot of you that are getting into the space, what type of realistic margins you would be looking at on a month-to-month basis. And that's something you want to definitely track as you get your first facility up and going, and making sure that you have a good understanding of where that margin's at, and giving yourself enough of a buffer and a safety margin in there. You know, a lot of my performers, I factor in a vacancy rate, because you never want to ever assume that you're going to be full at all times, because that's not reality. So you always want to factor in about a 10% vacancy rate. And 10% is a lot when it's a 5-bed or even a 6-bed. So that's why I always encourage for a lot of individuals to try to do anything from 10 beds and above, because of the fact that if you have a 10% vacancy rate with a 10-bed, you're down to 90% or 9 residents. And that's kind of where you're most likely going to be at most of the time, is 8 to 9 residents at any given time. You might dip a little below that, but at least you give yourself enough margin there where you're not essentially in the red. So that's just some insight for a lot of you that probably don't have much of an idea of what that could look like. But again, I sell a Performa template on Legion Assisted Living Academy that you guys can go purchase, and you can adjust it, play with the numbers, pretty much tailor it to exactly what you're trying to do with where you're at in the facility and the rates and what type of expenses you need to factor in. But for the most part, it's all built out, and it's just a matter of plug and play, and it'll give you a really good idea of what you could expect. So hopefully this video helped. If it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ask me any questions you may have down in the comment section, and I look forward to talking to you all in the next video. God bless.